We need to talk. Alright, so this isn't a video I really wanted to make. Honestly, this is a video that I kind of hoped I would never really make. I was kind of hoping that, you know, at this time I could be playing my native versions of Kingdom Hearts on the Switch on the go and just having the greatest time of my life. But, you know, we're here. So, it's no secret, especially by the fact that I'm sitting here dressed as Xehanort, that I'm a big fan of Kingdom Hearts. I am a huge fan of their games. It is my favorite series of all time. Games, media, whatever. Even Transformers, which I have a hefty collection of. It still pales in comparison to my love for this game series. Which, I mean, is part of why I'm making this video, to be honest with you. But, no, so the cloud versions of the Kingdom Hearts series are out. They've been out for, what, 8 days now? A little over a week. And, some people have been playing them and having a great time. Other people have bought them, played them, and realized, oh my god, they're cloud versions, and instantly regretted their purchases. Not knowing that there were demos available. So I kind of wanted to make this rant to kind of just get my thoughts out there, finally, and to just really just voice my opinion on, as well as like why these games should be running natively on Switch. Now, in order for you to take me more seriously, I'm going to change out of the Xehanort cosplay. I was dressed in it for comedic effect, so give me a second. So for starters, I haven't played the full versions of the cloud games. I haven't bought the full versions of the cloud games. I refuse to buy the full versions of the cloud games because of the reasons that I'll outline. But I played the demos for each of these games, both before and after the updates. Now, 1.5 and 2.5 was one that I wasn't able to play after the update happened because my demos had already been used up. They said that they reset the demo counter, but they clearly didn't because I wasn't able to actually get in there to play it after the update just to see if anything had been improved. But the other titles, 2.8 as well as 3, were ones that I was able to play both before and after the update. And each time I ran into the same issues. There was pixelation, input delay, frame drops. You know, they were all throughout those playthroughs. Now, to clarify and kind of give you an idea of the situation that I have network-wise, I have pretty great Wi-Fi, actually. I was able to run stuff like, you know, I played the cloud version of Control for a little bit. Wasn't really my cup of tea playing it over the cloud, especially when I have a PlayStation I can play it, you know, just fine. But I wanted to test it out just to see, and like that game was actually pretty good over cloud, and then, you know, it was really fun, to be completely honest with you. I digress. I'm kind of going on a little tangent, a little mini review of my short play on Control, but no, I have great Wi-Fi here. And on top of that, I was playing these games, you know, the demos at night, in the dead of night, when the only thing connected to my Wi-Fi was my Switch, because I wanted to see how it performed at the most optimal times for my Wi-Fi. Now, that being said, even after the update, I still ran into the same issues, and I'll include examples of that footage there. Now, the pixelation is, of course, something that, like, you know, is just gonna be there with streaming, which kind of defeats the purpose of it being called the HD remix if it's gonna be pixelated like that, but, you know, I digress from that. But my point is that because I ran into the same issues at pretty much the same frequency as before, which really kind of disrupted with my gameplay, I feel, it was as if the update never happened. And that's the trouble with, like, updating a cloud game, is that, you know, regardless, at the end of the day, it depends on your network connection. It's not running from your system. It's running from some computer located somewhere far away. The closer that you are to that server, the better that your play is going to be. And supposedly it would be even better with a tethered connection, but my Switch is not one of the ones that came with the little Ethernet connector thing, and I'm not going to go out of my way to buy an Ethernet connector just to test out cloud versions of these games. I'm not doing that. But even then, the network capabilities of the Switch aren't the greatest. You know, certainly aren't really meant for cloud gaming. And despite the fact that I never used a wired connection, I watched several people that have better connections than me, both wired and wireless, and they still ran into the same issues. Heck, they ran into the issues at an even higher rate than I did, which is surprising. And that told me that the only way that you're really going to be able to fully enjoy playing these games on your Switch is if you have a godly wired or wireless internet connection. And based on feedback and reviews that I've seen on social media and on YouTube, the only place that really seems to have the wireless capabilities to be able to fully enjoy things in that way is Japan. And that's just because they seem to have a much better network for cloud gaming, at least from what I hear. Now, when it comes to the cloud gaming itself, the issues I just mentioned were very annoying, yes, like honestly dang near infuriating, but those weren't really the main issues that bothered me. I mean, for starters, the games are only available in certain parts of the world. Let's say the cloud gaming worked absolutely fantastic and I saw no issue with cloud gaming. Great, alright, awesome, really. But still, the games are only available in Japan, America, Canada, and certain parts of Europe. That means that anyone that's out of those areas, it's just tough luck for them. It's kind of messed up, you know? You're alienating a good portion of your audience, not just your audience, but the Switch's audience, by making your games cloud versions, even though you could totally make them run natively on the Switch. 3 being available, but still. And in my opinion, it kind of shoots Square in the foot because that kind of keeps them from making more profits on these games being put on the Switch, because people have been begging for these titles, including myself, on the Switch for the past 5 years. People that live in those areas outside of that cloud coverage have been begging for this for 5 years. They're not just gonna come move to the States or Japan or Canada or those specific parts of Europe just to play those games. So they're really shooting themselves in the foot when it comes to that. There's also the issue that you don't actually own the games. Now, for starters, I've always been someone that's been a physical only, if I can, kind of collector, and even someone that's even spoken against digital versions of games at times, because at the end of the day, when you buy a digital version of a game, especially a multiplayer game, it is just a certificate, essentially a license to have that version of the game. And at any point in time, those companies can come along and just take that license from you, and then you just don't have the game and you have no say. But at the same time, that's still better than having a cloud version of a game. Let me explain for those who don't know. When it comes to a cloud version of a game, it runs entirely on those servers. We already know this. Now, if something, God forbid, were to ever happen to those servers to make them unable to play those games anymore, to stream those games rather. If something like a power outage or something that fried those servers happened and they just decided not to bring those servers back up, guess what? You're out of luck. You can't play those games anymore. That means that those like almost $80 that you're spending on these games, down the drain. The same also goes for when they eventually, because it is a when they eventually shut down the servers for those cloud games. That means that you're never going to be able to play those games again. Yeah, you can have those icons on your Switch, and you might be able to still download the games from Switch. Shoot, they might even still let you purchase the games from Switch. I'm not sure if they will or not, but they might. You're not going to be able to play the games, though, because the servers aren't operational. So any way you slice it, you're paying anywhere from $32 if you buy one of the games now to $80 if you buy the entire collection after the price goes back up for a rental. You know, kind of let that sink in. You're paying $80 for a rental of a game when you could turn around and probably spend $80 and get a few different games running natively on Switch that you own, either physically or digitally. And despite the fact that, like I said, digital versions of games are just licenses, it's still better to own those games and run those games natively on your system than to pay for a rental, especially when those games can and should run natively on your system for you to own for that price. Or even less, depending on what system that you're on. Which kind of also brings me to the other issue, which is the price of admission here. They're asking for anywhere from $32 for 1.5 and 2.5 to $80 if you buy the entire collection after the price goes up. for these games that you don't even really own. As you've probably seen on social media or on YouTube or anywhere else that's talking about these Kingdom Hearts Cloud versions right now, or anywhere that's talking about Kingdom Hearts right now, the whole collection for PlayStation goes on sale regularly for $25. It happens like every couple weeks almost. And that's every game leading up to 3, just like what they're offering you in the complete Integrum Masterpiece on the Switch for $25. Sure, it doesn't include the DLC, but still. And on Xbox, sure, the price is a little bit higher, a good amount higher, but you still at least own the games, and it's also not as bad as it is here. And the Epic Games Store on PC, which is the most expensive versions of these games, yeah, they're very expensive. I think it's like $90 last time I checked if you wanted to get every game from that store, or maybe closer to $100 if you wanted to get Melody of Memory as well. But at least they run natively on your PC. You own them. I've seen a lot of people making arguments saying, well, you stream them on your PC. No, you don't. You actually download the games. That's why people are able to mod them. It's because you download the actual games. They run natively on your system. You don't have to worry about an internet connection or anything going out. If internet ceased to exist and you had the games on PC downloaded to your PC, chances are you would still be able to play them. Actually, correction, you might need an internet connection in order to actually register that you own those games through the Epic Games Store, but regardless, it's still running from your system. You still own it. And the same will probably go once Steam Decks start becoming more common and once the games actually make their way to Steam, which I'm sure is probably going to happen at some point, probably this year. Which at that point, if you have a Steam Deck, you're not only going to be able to play those games portably, natively, but you actually own them. I mean, bottom line is, I just think that $80 for a game rental is absurd to me when you could own the games for much less, not factoring in the cost of buying an actual system to run those games if you don't have those systems. There's also another issue being the audience on Switch, in my opinion. A vast majority of owners for the Switch are children. The vast majority of people who are going to want a Switch are children. Children who usually don't have their own private internet connection specifically for gaming. And on top of that, children who might not even know what a cloud version even is. This is another aspect where Square has kind of shot themselves in the foot, because since children are a majority of the Switch's audience, and the target audience for the system even, you can't really argue that Nintendo targets children for their games. With that, they would have made a killing with native ports on the Switch, especially physical versions. Now, to kind of add to this argument, I worked at GameStop for a long while, all the way up until a little after Melody of Memory came out. And when Melody of Memory came out for Switch, kids were getting parents to buy it, and parents were picking it up for their kids for like Christmas or birthdays or whatever, simply because Mickey Mouse and the Disney logo were on the cover. That alone sells copies, regardless of all the convoluted lore that lies within Kingdom Hearts. Now, you might still get that with the cloud versions. You might still get kids that are going up to their parents like, hey, can you buy me this for the Switch? But with them probably not even knowing what a cloud version is, and with parents probably not even knowing what a cloud version entails, basically the fact that they're paying $80 for a rental, kids might have a hard time playing a majority of the time because of those internet connectivity issues that come with sharing an internet connection with an entire family. And on top of that, they might be under the false impression that they can take the games with them anywhere, like they would any other Switch game, which that alone is probably going to cause a lot of issues with parents calling up Nintendo saying, hey, my kid can't play this game on the Switch, it doesn't work. And then Nintendo going, oh, well, it was a cloud version. Do they have an internet connection? No? Well, tough. And then that kind of brings me to another huge reason why having such a beloved series, probably one of, if not probably Square's second most beloved series, probably next to Final Fantasy, or even maybe their most beloved series. I don't know, I haven't checked that rating. But it's another huge reason why having such a beloved series on the Switch via the cloud isn't a good idea. And that is, it defeats the entire purpose of having those games on the Switch. When fans begged Square Enix for the past 5 years to put the games on the Switch, we had hopes that it would finally be a way to take the games on the go, the way we dreamed of doing since Chain of Memories came out for the Game Boy Advance, or since 358 Days came out on the DS. Considering that the Switch is a hybrid console with relatively decent specs. Yeah, sure, it's dated hardware, but it's decent specs. We had high hopes that this would finally be the system that could at least run the games leading up to 0.2. Instead, the cloud versions here are about as portable as a Wii U gamepad, which is not very portable at all, and when you go into the bathroom, you're probably going to have some internet connectivity issues. And that goes against the entire point of the Switch system, being a hybrid handheld home console. You know, it's meant to be a console that you can take everywhere and play your games that would normally only be available on home consoles, or games that would normally only be available on handhelds. Looking at you, Pokemon. Now, what bothers me on a more personal note as a Square Enix and Kingdom Hearts fan is Square Enix's response to fan outcry. Putting aside that they've decided to kick off the 20th anniversary with these cloud ports, fans have been in near complete disapproval of the cloud versions of these games for Switch ever since their initial announcement during the Smash Ultimate Direct, or at least since finding out that they were cloud versions after the Direct. Now, understandably, when the Direct was happening, I was very emotional and was just taking things at face value. I didn't even hear cloud versions. And then later on, found out that they were cloud versions. And my disappointment was immeasurable, and my day was ruined. But jokes aside, in response, Square mentioned that native versions weren't completely off the table, saying that they were still undecided. And they also said that they would listen to fan feedback. Now, since the demos released, last month, fan outcry only grew stronger, and yet Square has only continued to push forward with promoting the cloud versions of these games. Now, look, I realize that changes in plans and official statements take time. I know they do. But it definitely feels like the statement about listening to fan feedback was just an empty corporate promise so that we would get off their backs. And on top of that, it seems like I know that they might not be, but it seems like they're basically ignoring us. You know, basically shoving us down by putting out more and more advertisements and updates for these games saying that they run better and that it's the best way to experience these games and buy them. My point is that it just rubs me the wrong way that statement feels like an empty corporate promise to fans that have been following the series for the past 20 years and have been asking for these games to come to Switch for the past 5 years. Now, it's pretty evident, but I am just gonna say it anyways, I can't recommend these cloud versions of the games at all. If you have a PlayStation, if you have an Xbox, if you have a PC, if you have a Steam Deck, or if you're thinking about getting any of those other ways to buy them, then play them that way, because all of those ways are objectively better than playing them on the cloud via the Switch, regardless of if you have a good internet connection or not, regardless of if you live near the servers in Japan or the United States or not. I mean, 1.5 and 2.5 are based on games that are nearly 20 years old. Yeah, sure, you could make the argument that they are PS3 games because they had to be rebuilt and remastered from the ground up for the PS3, but still, those games should and could run on the Switch, natively. Now, 2.8 is debatable just because of 0.2 being in there, but I still feel like that could run natively on the Switch. And yes, 3 is also probably something that will just remain on the cloud, and I'm totally fine with that because there's pretty much no chance that Square Enix is going to employ the help of someone like Panic Button to properly port these games to Switch, and I doubt that they're ever going to go through the proper measures to port that game to the Switch natively. So honestly, that one being cloud is fine. I'm probably not going to pick it up, but still, it's fine that that one stays cloud. I also understand that Square Enix is up to their neck in projects right now, from Final Fantasy VII Part 2, to Final Fantasy 16, to Final Fantasy Origins, to Forspoken, to the next Kingdom Hearts installment, and whatever else they're working on. But if they're going to put the Kingdom Hearts series on Switch, and on top of that, kick off the 20th anniversary of the series by putting these games on Switch, then they should put in the effort that we know they could to at least port 1.5 and 2.5 to the Switch. If file size is an issue like they've been saying, Switch owners are no strangers to SD cards, even going up into the terabyte storage level. And on top of that, they're not strangers to digital-only downloads. I mean, shoot, if they really have to, they could just put a download code inside of a case and call it the physical version. Overwatch did that. It worked. I bought it. Back before the Blizzard controversy, but it's a whole nother thing. And when games like Assassin's Creed or Outer Worlds or Witcher or Skyrim or Doom are running natively on the Switch and were able to be put on physical cartridges for the Switch, I mean, shoot, man, all 3 of these games are on the cartridge. Yeah, you gotta do a download update, but still, like, that leaves Square Enix with pretty much no excuse for why these games can't be put natively on the Switch. I mean, yeah, like I said, 0.2, debatable. Kingdom Hearts 3, probably not going to happen, but all those other titles, they could totally do it. Like, if they're going to charge $80 as the price of admission, making it the second most expensive way to buy the collection on any system, then they at least need to make it worthwhile. Until they do that, the versions of the games on the Switch are, unfortunately, objectively, the worst ways to experience these games. And the second most expensive way to experience these games. Like, it's a rental, man. Like, my God. On top of that, I'm worried because even though these games are in the top seller area of the Nintendo eShop, which bothers me because of the cloud version aspect of it, eventually when these games fall off and they see all the feedback, Square Enix is probably going to take the same approach that they did with Neo The World Ends With You and just say, oh, well, Kingdom Hearts fans obviously don't want these games on Switch, instead of taking the approach of, well, we should probably port these games to Switch because that seems to be what these people want. And that honestly worries me and angers me. But until they make that kind of response, until they go and put these games on the Switch natively, I can't recommend these. Don't buy these cloud versions. There are too many unpredictable factors that could affect your gameplay and that could just honestly ruin the experience for you, especially if it's your first time playing these games. Just don't do it. That's my rant. Those are my thoughts. If you agree with them, comment. If you don't, comment. Let me know why. I'd love to see your insight. But, yeah, that's my video. See ya.